Boker Tov Givrim.
Boker Tov.
Ma Shlomkem. Got some raws this morning, and that's not because you're cheering. It's partly due to going over the exam. All right. Well, today we want to begin by taking a look at weak verbs. This is chapter 26 of your textbook. And we want to look at weak verbs. Now, a strong verb is a verb that has consonants that are not gutturals. It has no weak consonants in it. If you have a hey on the end, that's a weak consonant. It's also a guttural. If you have an aleph, a hey, a cheth, or an ayin, or a resh inside the roots, the root letters, then you have a weak verb. And if you have a strong verb, it doesn't have those. Katal, kof, teth, lamed is a strong verb. Mashal is a strong verb. Kathav is a strong verb. So this is the distinction. Weak verbs deal with those verbs that have weaknesses in them. Either the first, second, or third, or more of the root letters are weak and either disappear, are assimilated, or undergo changes that are not characteristic of the regular consonants. That's why we call them weak verbs. Now, there are two methods of nomenclature. Nomenclature is the naming system. And so as we look at these, first of all, we have to understand where the names of the verb stems came from. Why do we say cal? We say cal because it is the light, unencumbered stem of the verb. No prefixes, special prefixes like the nun in the nifal, the hey in the hifil, the hith in the hifpa'el. No infixes like the hirik yod infix in the hifil. No doubling dogish internal like it is in the pl, the pual, and the hithpael. So that verb form that is simple, especially the active, is called cal. Cal means quick, rapid, or light. But the rest of the names, nifal, pl, pual, hifil, hafal, and hithpael, are all based upon the root word pa'al. Pa'al means he worked. He worked. It is in some ways a synonym to asa. But pa'al is what the ancient Arabic grammarians who wrote the first Hebrew grammar utilized for their verb paradigms. We use katal primarily. Nowadays, because katal means he killed, people don't want to appear to be violent or anything of that nature, so they switch to mashal or shamer to use, or kathav to use, in spite of the difficulties those present at times, and that's why the Arab grammarians avoided them. But their names are based upon pa'al. So nifal is how you pronounce the nifal, perfect, third masculine singular of the verb pa'al. Pl is how you pronounce the pl, perfect, third masculine singular of pa'al. The pual is how you pronounce the pual, perfect, third masculine singular of pa'al. They're all based on this form. So therefore, one of the nomenclature systems utilized for naming weak verbs uses pa'al. So that when you have the verb akal, for example, notice where the weak radical occurs. Notice where the guttural occurs. It occurs in the position known as the pay position. So therefore, it's called a pay guttural or a pay aleph verb. We go to ma'as. He rejected. Akal is he ate. Ma'as, he rejected. Notice the aleph is in the second position, which is the ayin position. Therefore, it is known as an ayin guttural verb. Malay, he filled. Notice the guttural is in the third position, the lamed position. Therefore, it is known as a lamed guttural or a lamed aleph verb. That's in the first nomenclature system. The second nomenclature system substitutes the pay, ayin, and lamed with Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3. So that amer is known as a one guttural or one aleph verb. Now we could say the same thing about akal. And we could also say akal is a one guttural or one aleph. I've given you different verb forms here so you can just get more verb forms that fit this category. But it's not saying that we have two different systems, one system for these groups of words and another system for another group of words. Both systems apply to all verbs, okay? Both systems apply to all verbs. One system is an older system. That's the top one, number one. The next system is the newer system, which is number two. Nahal has a chaf in the second position. It also has a noon in the first position. So it can be known as a second guttural. It can also be known as a first or a one noon, or a pay noon, or an ayin guttural. Shama, he heard. That can be taken then as a third guttural or a three guttural, or it can also be called a lamed guttural. Lamed guttural. Now notice that here when you have the aleph can enter the name, like a pay aleph or a one aleph. It's only for aleph and hay that normally occurs, and occasionally for the noon and occasionally for a yod. And we'll talk about those as we go along, and we'll have to get used to some of these, and it'll grow on you after a while as we work on classification. Scott?
Why does the aleph not enter the name in the ayin?
The aleph there, because it's not initial, it's not final, it doesn't become silent. Okay? So like here we have the aleph, makes it a pay guttural or a pay aleph. Down here, the same type of verb, a second naming, a different system of naming, applies equally to all the verbs that are on this chart, is a one guttural or one aleph. Here it's an ayin guttural, not an ayin aleph. All right? We don't apply the aleph or hay to the name when it's in the middle. Only when it's in the first or last position. And down here, you have a chaf, that's a two guttural. Can be two guttural or ayin guttural. Remember, it's two guttural or ayin guttural. It's ayin guttural by the first nomenclature, the older nomenclature. You're learning two naming systems. Both naming systems apply to all the verbs, all the same verbs. It's not one system for one group of verbs and another system for another group of verbs. Both systems apply equally to every single verb in the Hebrew. Okay? And then lamed, aleph or lamed guttural for malay, again because the aleph is final. It can affect the name, and that's only in the first and last positions. Or this is called a third guttural when you have the ayin there. The ayin is not added to the name. The chaf is not added to the name. All right? It's not, this isn't an ayin guttural. The ayin guttural is in the second position up there. And you can't call this a three ayin because it doesn't go that way. All right, Kelly?
I was just curious, when you were talking about where we've gotten the names of the stems,
Yes.
is that something that modern grammarians have made up? So when we think nifal, PL, puel, and all those, Hebrews didn't talk about their language like that. That's us looking at it.
It's not really us. It started with Arab grammarians in the 8th century AD who began the system of names, nomenclature.
So they began to categorize, and they used that verb and put it in each form.
That's correct.
Named it, and then that's where we go.
That's right. That's where it comes from. And now all Hebrew-speaking peoples or Hebrew-using peoples use that nomenclature. But it was not originated by Hebrews. It was originated by Arabs. But Hebrews use it today. But ancient Hebrews probably had no such name for it. Okay? All right? Now, we've got that one out of the way. Let's go next to looking at what we have in chapter 26. Weak verb forms, specifically first root letter. And as you're looking on page 155, notice on the introduction to weak verbs, Weak verbs are those verbs possessing one of the following characteristics. A guttural as one or more of the three letters of the root makes it a weak verb. A full letter vowel as the middle letter of the root makes it a weak verb, like cum, to rise. A yod or wow as the first letter of the root, as in yada, he knew, yashav, he dwelt, makes it a weak verb. A nun as the first letter of the root makes it a weak verb, as in Nathan, he gave, nachal, he inherited. The same constant for both the second and third letters of the root. So if you have kalal, two lameds together, second and third, that makes it weak. Those make those weak verbs. Then the primary concepts we must remember. Number one, gutturals reject the doubling dogish. When that is rejected, normally you have compensation by a heightening of the preceding vowel. We've seen that already in the nif vowel. We've seen it already with min, when the nun is assimilated and when it's rejected. We've seen it with the article, when it's rejected. You're very familiar with that process. Gutturals prefer A-class vowels around them. We've already seen that. And gutturals prefer compound schwa. You have to maintain the rules, the three rules, the gutturals, to help you out. Now, we've gone over the nomenclature, and you can go over that again in your textbook on page 156. But now we're moving on to page 157 on the one guttural or pay guttural verb forms. On the screen, you can see various examples of a pay guttural or one guttural. Remember again, these are two different naming systems that apply to all 6 verbs that are up here. Ragaz is not just a one guttural. It is a pay guttural also, because it's 2 different naming systems. Is everyone clear on that? I want to make certain we're clear. I don't want a confusion here to where you think that ragaz is only a one guttural and not a pay guttural because of where I have it listed. Both naming systems apply to all the verbs. Okay? So avad is a pay guttural or a one guttural. Chalab is a pay guttural or a one guttural. Haval is a pay guttural or a one guttural. Ragaz is a pay guttural or a one guttural. Hakam is a pay guttural or a one guttural. Akar is a pay guttural or a one guttural. It depends on which naming system you're using, which system the grammar you're reading is using when they refer to it. But you have to be familiar with both systems. The one that uses the pay, ayin, and lamed for each to represent the 3 different root letters is the older of the 2 systems. Okay, John, question?
I'm just confused why we don't just pick one and go with it.
Because you have to understand both if you're going to be conversant with and be able to read Hebrew grammars, Hebrew grammarians, and discussions of the Hebrew text in commentaries and in various grammatical productions and in journal articles. Because no one system has been adopted universally across the board by all Hebraists. So you have to be familiar with both. It's just like Wayiktol and Vayiktol. You have to know both. You have to know that the letter Wow is Wow and also Vav. Because there are 2 different systems used, there has not been a universal standardization. Okay? That's why you must learn both. All right, so as we look at these, we can see what kind of verbs we're talking about. Notice ayin, cheth, hey, resh. These are all letters that make these pay gutturals. Notice what I left out. No aleph. All right? The aleph is not included because normally, although that is still a pay guttural or an initial guttural, a one guttural, it is also primarily known as a pay aleph or a one aleph because it does different things than all the rest of these. Because that aleph can disappear. The ayin, cheth, and hey, and resh here do not disappear. That's why the aleph is kept separate. Okay? So let's look at some of the characteristics. First of all, we must remember the peculiarities of the gutturals. Reject the doggish. Prefer A-class vowels, prefer compound schwas. Reject the doubling doggish. As we look at these two forms, what can you tell me about these two verb forms? Dennis? Tell me anything at all you can about them. Just pick one thing. Because there's about 6 things you could say.
First letter of stem is a guttural.
Okay, the first letter of the root is a guttural. Okay, let's go one step beyond that because I've already told you that.
It's a prefix.
Go ahead.
Prefix to one is prefix.
All right.
Yod,
Okay. Okay, the yod and tau are both prefixes. Okay? If they have prefixes, what's that telling us? It's an imperfect. Okay. Let's go further. James Lee. What else can you tell me about these two verbs?
The hearing ties into a serif underneath the formators.
Okay, why?
Because they refuse doubling.
They refuse doubling. Therefore, if the herik has been heightened to its seri because the doubling doggish has been rejected, Jan, what conjugation of verb are these? What stem? What's the only stem that takes a doubling doggish in the first root letter? Nifal. 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 Remember, the noon of the name Nifal is assimilated in the first root letter in the imperfect, the imperative, and the infinitives. And so this tells us then, this is the Nifal triangle. It's the Nifal triangle in which the doubling doggish has been rejected by the first root letter because it's a guttural, and the herik has been heightened to its seri to compensate. So both of these are nifal imperfects. Okay? This is the only place you're going to have the rejection of the doggish because it's only in the nifal that you have a doubling doggish that needs to be there. Go back over your knowledge of the verb stems. That's the only place that you have a doubling doggish in the first root letter of your verbs, is in the nifal. Okay? So that's what we're going to have to get used to seeing. But everything's still there. It's a stealth nifal triangle. Because the doubling doggish you don't see, but you see the effects of it. All right? It's flown in and dropped its bomb, and it has bounced off of the guttural, and it exploded over the herik prefix and divided it in half with 2 dots now instead of 1. All right? The stealth nifal triangle. It's still there. You still have an I or E class vowel under the imperfect prefix, plus the doubling doggish has had its effect in the first root letter, and a comma's under that first root letter. So it's a nifal imperfect. You see why you don't need to memorize the entire paradigm of guttural or the one guttural verbs? Because if you learn all the things we've learned about it otherwise in the strong verb, it's all the same things. Everything is logical, everything is consistent. There's a reason for everything that's happened. And the primary thing, that's why we go back to the 3 rules of the gutturals again, because those are the 500-pound gorillas that rule the roost on the Hebrew verb. They prefer compound schwa. As we're looking at these, why is it that we have ta'avot and yachaziku? Why don't we have yachaziku with a schwa under the cheth? And why don't we have ti-evot, like tik-tol, ti-vot? Why don't we have that? The guttural prefers compound schwa. If the guttural prefers compound schwa, it is primarily going to be a hatif pathic in such cases. And so with a hatif pathic, What does it do to the prefix vowel? The prefix vowel becomes the equivalent short vowel of that compound schwa. How do we know that ta'avod is a cal? Look at the holum. Like yiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol, niktol, etc. Okay, remember you have to memorize all of your cal verb. If you memorize all the cal verb, you know about the holum here. And yachaziku, the hirik yod infix between the zayin and the kof tells you it's a hifil. All right? But here's the explanation for the compound schwa under the guttural, and in the cal, why it looks like you have a hifil prefix there because the pathic under the prefix. It's because it's agreeing with the compound schwa. That's all the reason for it. It's not a hifil. There's no hirik yod infix. It has a holum. That proves that it is a cal. And that continues on with a lot of them. Notice here, back up here a minute here. Notice ti'imidu, tiktali, tiktali, all right? Tiktali. Cal imperfect, second feminine singular. The ayin has to take a compound schwa there on the right-hand side. So we change it, and notice what it does. Ta-md. It changes. Oops, it didn't go back the right direction. There we go. Goes from here to here. And so all the way across there you can see the various things that take place and how you get the things. Why do we have a schwa under the chayth here? It's an exception. Why? Why is it an exception? Something else we learned way back in the first few chapters of your textbook. Chayth is what kind of guttural? Strong guttural. The strong guttural you can expect from time to time to have an exception here. And that's what happens here. Yachmod is still a cal imperfect, third masculine singular, but it did not change the way ta'md did. It did not change the way yachaziku changed. It did not change like ta'evot. It did not change like he'evid. Here you have a hatif segol used. And notice the corresponding short vowel is used under the prefix. This is a hifil, perfect, third masculine singular of avad. Still maintains the IRE class vowel and still has a hirik yod infix between the second and third root letters. Jeff?
Why did it go to a patback if the schwa didn't change?
Here? Where do you see ya avod? Oh, here. Here. Why the schwa did not change? Because the chayth is a strong guttural.
I know that, but why didn't? I thought you said that was a cal, so why is there a patback?
Yes, this is a cal. Notice the holum up here?
And why is there a patback and not a two?
Because it still prefers, the other rule, it prefers A-class vowels around it.
Okay.
Okay? Yes?
I had a question about the first rule about the rejecting the double and the dogish.
Correct.
On page 157 in the grammar,
Yes.
You have as an example, hey chave.
Yes.
So if the hey rejects, or it rejects a dogish, but it's just kind of understood that it's supposed to be there, does the hirik yod still heighten then?
Yes.
Okay.
It does on occasion. Now, remember, the chayth is a strong guttural, but it does not always behave as a strong guttural. Sometimes it still behaves as a weak guttural. The chayth is one of those things you have to realize he has two faces. And in this case, the example, he behaved as a strong guttural, but a strong guttural that rejected the dogish, not by implication, but in truth. Yes. So you just have to keep that in mind. Haith is going to be one of those things that you're going to come up against again and again. And you're going to say, why didn't it do this? Why didn't it do this? And yet it just keeps on.
Does the hay do that as well?
No, primarily the haith. You'll very seldom see that with the hay. It might occur on a very rare occasion, but the haith is the one that you have to watch out for. It's the one that has two faces. Okay, James.
Under 1C, the same thing, the other word, is the reason that there's a schwa because of the full letter shirk on the end?
The schwa to the zayin.
Yeah.
The zayin's a strong consonant, not a guttural. Okay. All right, anyone else? All right, let's go one more thing here. Prefer A-class vowels. Prefer A-class vowels. Ta-avot, ya-chazik. This is that A-class vowel. They always prefer them, and they're going to be normally the equivalent of the half vowel. Okay, let's finish up on part of this. We're not going to finish the chapter today. We're not going to finish going through the cases of the pay gutturals, but at least we got started on it, and it's good to have a little bit at a time and then come back and carry some more. I just wanted to cover one more situation. There are special cases involved with the pay gutturals. The first special case has to do with those that are initial aleph in the root. We call these pay aleph or one aleph verbs. And in the special cases, there are 6 verbs. They're listed for you at the top of page 158 of your textbook. At the top of page 158, there are 6 verbs and 6 verbs only that fit into these special cases. Avad, that means he destroyed. Ava, he was willing. Achaz, he grasped, or it can be taken as he was strong. Akal, he ate. Amer, he said. And Afa, he baked. Those 6 verbs and those 6 verbs only behave in a very special fashion, especially in the cal imperfect. The cal imperfect. So as you're looking at these verbs, and I just went through these 6, and I have them up here again. Avad, he destroyed. Ava, he was willing. Achaz, he seized, he grasped, or he was strong. Akal, he ate. Amer, he said. Afa, he baked. As we look at those 6 verbs, they behave differently. Various changes involving the aleph, and they're in the imperfect. Notice here, tokeil is the cal imperfect, second masculine, and third feminine singular. Look what has happened. The holum that is characteristic in yiktol, tiktol is not there. The hiric prefix vowel is not there. Instead, you have a holum with the prefix, and you have a tsere used under the second root letter instead of a holum over it. So it's tokeil. Wayomer. The reason the segol here instead of the tsere is because of the way. The way of the wayiktol. And we've seen this. You've seen this form, wayomer. Wayomer is one of those forms you have to know and identify because it occurs thousands of times in the Hebrew Bible. It's the wayiktol. It's a cal imperfect, third masculine singular. It means then or so he said. All right? But notice it has the yo, not an ektol. Remember what the verb form is normally. In the strong verb form, the first person common singular prefix is e. And then we had this, ektol. I killed, I was killing, I am killing, or I will kill. That's the form we're used to seeing. And we could change that. We could have I will write. Ektov. All right? We're used to seeing that. But not in these 6 verbs. In these 6 verbs that begin with an aleph, in the imperfect, It's not going to be that way, and it doesn't matter whether it's an aleph prefix, doesn't matter if it's a tau prefix, doesn't matter if it's a yod prefix, you're going to have a holum instead. Lay more, to say. The reason that we have this, remember, is because you have the cal infinitive construct is this, emor, instead of ketol. And the reason is that this is a guttural, therefore it prefers a compound schwa. But notice what it chooses. Lay more. The aleph becomes silent, and the tseri is there, like we saw in Elohim, Welohim. Then we have omer. This is fascinating, because what we have here in this, in the first common singular, when we put that onto, if we put aleph, mem, resh, how are we going to point it? And what happens is this aleph disappears. Remember the prefix vowel for the pay, these 6 pay aleph verbs is a holum. Then in the imperfect, it takes a pathic. And when you have omer, that's this vowel and this vowel together are cal active participle. That's how you tell the difference. And that's why you have to go to a pathic. Because if you keep it with the A-class value you see here in Wayomer, and you see in Tokeil, then you don't have a significant form for the cal active participle. So you have a pathic show up in the cal imperfect first common singular. This is the cal active participle masculine singular. This is the cal imperfect first common singular. The pathic makes the difference between this form and this form. Question, John?
In our textbook, 158, number 3, the second example, okale.
Yes.
So that's a participle,
That is a participle.
even though it's in this example that says
Correct.
it has an eliding aleph.
Correct. Okay. And then to save. Notice what's happening there. That's from asaf. Aleph, samik, pei. Mal, pei, nu is from aleph, lamed, pei. So tell me, what is mal, pei, nu? Look at the clues. Look at the clues. If this is a pei aleph verb, what is mal, pei, nu? Anyone? Give me one clue. Dogish in the lamed. Why is the dogish in the lamed? Aleph is not, does not assimilate. You still have a valid observation, but we haven't found the reason for it yet.
Would it make it either hifel or hofel? Because it's in the second root letter, the doubling dogish?
If you have a hifil or hofal, do you have a doubling dogish in the hifil or hofal? Piel and pual have a doubling dogish. All right? So with that in mind, piel or pual with a doubling dogish in the second root letter, and remember, we're talking about a pei aleph or initial or one aleph verb. This is from the verb laugh. All right? So the second root letter is a lamed, right? So a dogish, the second root letter makes it piel or pual or hithpael. All right, good. Now we're cooking. Because as we're looking at this, and we have mal, fe, nu. Okay, first of all, this tells us it has to be piel or pual or hithpael. The mem prefix tells us what? It is a participle. Let's keep going. What else? What else can we say, Kelly?
There's no kibbutz. So it has to be a PL, and there's also no tau.
Okay.
Or,
There's no tau in here, so it's not hithpael. There's no U-class vowel anywhere, therefore it's not pual. So we can identify this as a PL participle. But we're not finished. What else do we have? We have a suffix. Okay, what's the suffix?
Is it first common plural?
Is it first common plural?
Looks like a neck.
Okay, like on the ending of anachnu. All right? So how would we translate if it's first common plural?
Participles take
Go ahead. Keep talking, David.
so it can't be. Is it a pronominal suffix then?
Yes, it has to be a pronominal suffix. All right? And we are identifying it as a first common plural. Translate. First, I need to tell you what aleph means. That's where we get elif, or aleph rather from, aleph. Aleph is one of those verbs that can mean teach. Okay? So what's malthenu? If it's a participle, teaching us. Teaching us, if it's first common singular. Why wouldn't this be a third masculine singular? What about the noon? So it has to do with the noon. No doggish in the noon. If it's third masculine singular, there'd be a doggish in the noon. Okay? So it's teaching us. Or it could be one of those rare cases when this is a possessive and be our teaching. Okay? But that's the way we have to work through. It's a process of elimination. It's a process of paying attention to the clues and remembering what we know about the way the verbs work. All right? Okay, we're going to leave it here. I'll take any questions you have, and then we're going to move back to 1 Samuel 16. Question with David first.
So the pathing underneath the main prefix is because of the olive dropping out?
The pathek here is in order to approximate the PL form, because remember the PL would have been m, cattail. Ka. That a was very important, significant. And so this is the way they approximate it and keep it in. All right? The only other way to go in this, and this does not allow it, the doggish does not allow it, is to take this as a hifil. But where is your heric yod infix? It's not here. This tseri is under the third root letter, not the second root letter. So it can't be a hifil. And we're used to seeing a meme with a pathek being a hifil participle. But here, this is done just because of the fact it's going to approximate that PL form. Pathek shows up. Yes, Chad?
I didn't understand when you said on the suffix there, the new suffix, if it had a doggish.
Right. If you put a doggish in it like this, then that makes the third masculine singular pronominal suffix. Yes, John?
I'm confused about when we said there's these 6 special verbs, but that's not one of these 6. What are
No.
the significance of the 6
No.
up there?
The first 6 are the ones where you have the aleph that becomes like an O-class prefix in the cal imperfect.
So they only apply to like points 1, 2, 3?
Yes. Right. And now we're dealing with some other changes. There's always a few that come in that are not normal, but do still have some of those characteristics. This is something you're going to find all the way through the week verbs. You'll have a rule set, and then you have exceptions to the rules. Okay? All right, anyone else? Other questions? Okay, let's leave this off, and let us go to 1 Samuel 16:1. And let's begin with John Strickland. And if you would please take up to the Athnak on verse 1. Read it out loud in the Hebrew and then translate from the Hebrew for us. You pronounce this Yahweh.
Yeah. Vayomer Yahweh El Shemuel Ed Matai
Admatai.
Atah Mitiabel
Abel.
El Shaul Wa'ani Me'asiti.
Notice here that the dagish in the tau tells you that the preceding schwa is silent, closing the syllables. So it's ma'asti. Ma'asti. Mm-hmm. Mimmalok. Yeah, it's got a doubling dagish in the name. Therefore, you have both a silent schwa and a vocal schwa represented there in that one schwa.
Mimmalok El Yishra. El Yisrael.
Okay, and translate.
And the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul? I have rejected him as king of Israel.
All right. Let's go over this briefly here. Wayomer is that pay aleph verb we told you about. It's a wayik tol form, so we should begin with so or then. Then Yahweh said, it's he said, cal imperfect, third masculine singular from Amer, unto Samuel, Shemuel. How long? Add literally until matai, until when? Until when? Literally, which means how long. Atah, personal pronoun, second masculine singular, is the subject to the participle, because the subject to the participle must be stated because a participle does not have person. So this is the way we find out the person of the participle. It precedes the participle. It's a normal position. It's not emphatic. How long will you continue mourning? How long will you mourn? El Shaul, literally unto Saul. But in this context, after Abel, obviously it means how long will you mourn over Saul. In English, that's the way we translate. That's our collocation of forms in English. Wa'ani and, or you could do this as but I have rejected him. The him is the wow on the end of ma'asti. It's a third masculine singular pronominal suffix. In modern Hebrew, that's pronounced me'astiv, as a V on the end. In classical Hebrew, it's silent, me'asti. Mimmalok, a min preposition, prefix to the cow infinitive construct from malak, literally from ruling. He translates to be king, not any real huge problem about that at all, but literally from ruling. Al over Yisrael, from ruling over Israel. Okay? Let's go to the second half of the verse, carrying on from there. Kenny, read it in Hebrew first, to the end of the verse. Kar Nikah. Shemen. Eshlachaka. Yishai. Halachmi. Bevanau. Melech. Okay, and translate?
I will send you.
Okay, Male is fill. It's a PL imperative, masculine singular.
Fill your horn with oil. Fill your horn with oil, and I will send you to Jesse, the Bethlehem. It's like house of bread or Bethlehem.
Bethlehemite, yes.
Bethlehemite. To anoint for me.
There's no anoint here. Key, because Ra'iti, I have chosen.
Myself.
Okay, for me or myself a king among his sons. Great, okay. Let's go over that again here. Malay, PL imperative, masculine singular from Malay. Phil, Karnika from Karen, meaning horn. Ka is second masculine singular pronominal suffix. Fill your horn. Shemen, oil. Now, how do you get the with in there? Whenever you have two objects, two nouns that follow a verb this way, fill horn, fill oil, the second noun is taken as an adverbial accusative. An adverbial accusative. And you will have to translate it with some form of preposition in English in order to show the relationship. And here it is an adverbial accusative of the material with which you fill the horn. So fill your horn with oil. You do not italicize with in translation for that because it is part and parcel of the collocation of Malay and Karen, and it is also a nature of the service of the adverbial accusative. Walake is a cal imperative, masculine singular from halak. Halak. Literally, and go, I will send you. Go, I will send you. And we'll talk about this later, but in translation, we don't really translate the go. It's called an introductory imperative, and it's in order to show urgency. Literally is, I will send you right now. Okay, I will send you immediately. Eshlachaka is a cal, imperfect, first common singular from shalach with a second masculine singular pronominal suffix, I will send you. El, unto, Yishai, proper name, Jesse. Beit Halachmi, literally, house of the breadite, house of the Lechemite. And it's just the Bethlehemite. But the article comes midway through because it's still in the name. It still puts the article on the second noun in a construct relationship, literally house of bread. And so it becomes the Bethlehemite. You put the article on the second noun, even though it's a proper name, the Bethlehemite. Because, literally, I have seen, but chosen is equally well translated because ra'ah is often the idea of to choose or even to provide. I have seen among his sons. Vanau, the ending is a third masculine singular pronominal suffix, his. Vana is from B'nai, is the masculine plural construct form of sons, from Banim. Li, the lamed preposition and a first common singular pronominal suffix, for me. Melech, king, a king, no article on it. So we can translate this, fill your horn with oil, and I will immediately send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, because I have chosen for me, or for myself, a king among his sons. Okay? Scott.
Regarding the ending there and the for me, can that be for my king? Would that be wrong?
Yeah, that'd be wrong.
Okay.
My king would be Malachi.
Yeah.
Put it on the end of Melech.
English, it was kind of
Yeah,
awkward
it's
there.
for me, for myself.
Okay.
Okay?
For me.
Yes. All right, James?
How do you, I have chosen?
That's just one of the meanings of ra'ah listed in the lexicon. If you translate it as seen, no problem. Okay, Dennis?
Where did the immediately come from?
It comes from lake, the introductory imperative. Lake. And I told you we'd talk about that again later on sometime. All right? But lake, it often occurs as an introductory imperative. It isn't to be taken literally. Okay? It's like saying to your children, hurry up and come down here. And your son says, Dad, I can't do that. And you say, why not? Well, I can't go up and come down at the same time. Your response is, when I said hurry up, I don't mean it literally. I mean get down here right now. That's an introductory imperative you're using. Okay? You don't mean it literally. Same here, lake. It's not meant literally. Okay? Anyone else? All right, let's go to verse number 2. And Scott Basolo, let's jump to you.
Wayamer Shamuel
Ake.
Elek Washama Shaul Waharagani
Okay, keep going.
Wahamer
Wayomer
Yahweh Eglah Bakar Pekah Tikah Bed
Deyadeka Amerta Lisboa La Yahweh Bati. All right, translate.
And
Not and.
Then Samuel said, how... Let me get back about this here.
Okay, anyone? No, remember, don't use any.
Yeah, I wanted to get off that just to get back here when we started.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Then Samuel said, how shall I go and when Saul hears, then he will kill me. And then Yahweh said, take a heifer of a cow,
Heifer of the herd,
in your hand, and you say, to sacrifice to Yahweh, where did I go here? To sacrifice to Yahweh, or I come to sacrifice to Yahweh.
Okay, now let's go back over this very quickly here. Wayomer Shemuel. Then Samuel said, Ake a lake. How can I go? How can I go? Remember the can, could, would, should, things that can happen with verbs? The mood. Don't forget that. How can I go? If Saul hears, the wow here is equivalent to if because you have an if then. If Saul hears, and you had the equivalent of that basically when you said when Saul hears, then he will kill me. If Saul hears, then he will kill me. So Yahweh said, take a heifer of the herd, Eglath Bakar, in your hand, that sounds kind of odd. I mean, how's he going to do that? It's not that small, right? So it's really take with you. It's an idiomatic expression. It's just like you said, well, I hat in hand, I went to my father-in-law, to my future father-in-law, to beg for his daughter's hand in marriage. Well, number one, you didn't have a hat, so you don't have hat in hand. It's an idiom. And you didn't beg for her hand in marriage. You wanted her in marriage, all right? Hand's only part of her. You didn't want just the hand chopped off and given to you. We have a lot of idioms. And here it's just the idea of with you, with you. And you'll have that listed in the lexicon on holiday, that sometimes it just means with you. So Yahweh said, take a heifer of the herd with you, and you shall say, for sacrifice to Yahweh I have come. Or you could say, I have come to sacrifice to Yahweh. Okay? All right? Our time is up. But when we come back on Thursday, I want to begin again here. I want to go back over these just to review, to give you, again, a context to work with, and we're going to continue translating. You'll be graded on your translation, so be prepared. If you didn't get called on today, you know you're going to get called on Thursday. So don't be caught short-handed. Another idiom. All right? Thank you.